I came through a branch of the system with some people that are in direct descent from Dr. Asui. I'm an 8th degree Reiki master teacher of the Asui lineage, but I came through a branch with some people that went, it doesn't have to take that long, and it shouldn't be that expensive. You shouldn't have to learn all of your prosperity lessons simply to do Reiki. So they established a 2.5-day intensive where you do all 3 levels, 1st degree, 2nd degree, master level, bam, bam, bam. You pretty much just light the fuse and wait and skyrocket. And that's the way I teach it now. And I thought, and for years, there are all these things that we do in the Reiki classes that I was taught by my teacher and her teacher and her teacher before that I thought everybody did. And I started asking people, do you do the water ritual? And they went, no. And I discovered a lot of this is Taoist. It's Tibetan. And I found out the master symbol that we use is a little bit different than the one the Reiki Alliance uses. It's Tibetan. And it's the one that Dr. Asui is said to have used when he attuned people. I thought, well, now why would anybody change this? Why would anybody take this beautiful, elegant history of a metaphysical or holistic or spiritual art and water it down? And then I thought, oh yeah, I've read the Bible. These things get cleaned up a little bit. So Reiki was introduced in the Midwest in the 1980s, which is a pretty conservative time. This was the Reagan era. And, I kind of visualized them sitting around a kitchen table drinking tea and said, okay, let's go out and tell all of these Americans, we have this thing that this guy traveled up a mountaintop and he had this shamanic experience and he used to study Tibetan Buddhism and he esoteric, wait, come back. And they went, let's make him a Christian. Let's send him to school in Chicago. And let's get a little cleaner backstory to this. Now, I cannot footnote everything I just told you. It's what I've pieced together based on my own research. So if you go, well, wait a minute, that's not what I've heard or read, who knows? I mean, written records weren't kept of this for the most part. So you kind of have to just go on intuition as to what vibrates with you as truth and what vibrates as just true and what vibrates as, I don't know about that. And most of the time when you get that feeling, get that gut feeling, you're generally right, and you ignore it at your peril, and then later go, they showed me, and I didn't listen. The universe, when it comes time for you to learn a new modality, accept some form of healing, accept some kind of miracle in your life, will tap you on the shoulder. And if you don't listen, it'll give you a little nudge in the ribs. And if you still don't listen, you'll get a boot in the ass. And then if you still don't listen, then it can get ugly after that. So a key principle of this form of healing is the complete opposite of what Western-oriented medicine teaches us, that physical symptoms are the first sign of disease. This form of healing says that physical symptoms are the last sign. At some point, you have missed it on a spiritual, mental, emotional level, and now your body's going, you might want to take care of this before it gets any worse. At which point, then you have a lot of damage to repair before you can get at the root cause of all of that. So we could spend the next hour talking about, why do some people accept healing? Why do some people not? What are all the different things involved in it? And, what can you do about that as a practitioner? And, of course, the answer is, what? Nothing. You offer it, you give it to somebody, you have no investment in it whatsoever. I tell people after you've done a Reiki treatment, do not call the client, do not check on them to see how they're doing, because the second that you do, you have become invested in the outcome, the results, and that's going to change the whole frequency of it. When I had a martial arts school open, I had a guy who was one of my students, big Hispanic guy, football player in high school, bouncer at a bar, the last person I would have thought would take a Reiki class. And he took it and he loved it. He jumped into it with all 4 feet. I mean, he was just running out doing Reiki on all his friends, family. And he came in one day, and the Chinese word for teacher, the equivalent of sensei in Japanese, is sifu, S-I-F-U. That's how you address your teacher. And he came in one day and he said, Sifu, can I ask you a question? I said, well, Miguel, you just did. He went, can I ask you another one? And we could have gone on like that forever. I said, yeah, so what's your question? He said, every time I heal somebody, I get a headache. I said, well, okay, for starters, that wasn't a question. But think about what you just said. Say it again. He said, every time I heal somebody, I get a headache. I went, híjole, say it again, cabrón. And he went, every time I heal, and he hit himself in the head. He went, I'm not healing anybody, am I? And I said, no, and you just gave yourself a headache to learn that. So you're not the healer. You're just the vehicle. You're the antenna. You're the conduit, however you want to think of it. You bring this energy down, you hand it on to another person, and you let the work be done. Now, stuff can come up. You know, we got stuff, and as it comes out, you can decide how long you want to play with that, you know, how much you want to process. You can decide if you're not going to have gain without pain. And a lot of it that comes up is going to be mental and emotional, right? You know, you're going to want, and probably none of us have gone through that in the last week or so getting ready for this class on a full moon. You know, of course not. None of us have had weird dreams or, you know, things that have popped up in our life. I haven't. Have you? Of course we have. We've all been doing that all week to one degree or another. And I'm going to do it again if I walk off the edge of the stage. At which point everybody will run up and here, I can do Reiki, I can do this. Yeah, I'll heal you. I'll heal you. And you know, just to backtrack for 1 second, there's nothing wrong with Western technological medicine. It's great. You're walking into the ER with a body part in your hand that needs to be reattached. You want the technical expertise of Western medicine. You don't want to do Reiki on that. Now, you want to get it reattached. Then you do your Reiki. Then you do your, you know, EFT, and help speed up the healing process. So there's a place for all of this, you know, for the technical and the holistic and the metaphysical. But when the mental and emotional stuff starts coming up, you can wallow in it. You can suffer if you want to. If that's how you need to learn your lesson, you may. But there are tools available that will allow you to bypass that or go through it quickly. And hooponopono is one of them. And another one is my other favorite remedy. It's the Bach flower essences or Bach flower remedies. Edward Bach was an English physician in the 1930s, and he came to the conclusion he wasn't really truly healing his patients because he wasn't getting at the underlying mental and emotional. I mean, he was still in that modality of they're coming to me to be healed, I need to fix them. And he went, well, wait, I'm not getting at the mental and emotional and even the spiritual stuff that's manifesting as physical disease. So he was very empathic. He became so empathic that he would actually pick up on people's mental and emotional states. If they were angry, he would feel angry. If they were sad, he would feel, and he'd go wandering around in the meadows until he found a plant or a flower, and he would hold it until he felt better. And then he would catalog the symptomology, and then he would reduce this down homeopathically. Eventually, when he first started, he was going out at dawn and scraping dew off of flowers and collecting in little vials. And then he stumbled across the work of Samuel Hahnemann, who was the founder of homeopathy in the 1700s, and went, this is a lot easier. Homeopathy, familiar kind of with the general principle, it involves minute amounts of the original substance that are diluted, 1 drop to 100 and diluted again until there's no molecular trace of the original substance. But the energetic signature of it becomes stronger the more you reduce it. So he came up with 38 remedies and said some combination of these can address any mental, emotional state. This is all you need. You can work with these. And then he came up with a 39th remedy, rescue remedy. Yeah, which is most people's gateway drug, introduction to Bach flower essences, because it's for immediate acute stress. And again, these work just like I was saying earlier. They give you that frequency back until you're able to reproduce it on your own. They are foolproof. There are no side effects. They're FDA approved for stress. They don't interact with any other medications. They don't actually follow the laws of homeopathy, because homeopathy is, don't drink coffee, don't eat peppermint, don't drink, don't eat for 2 hours before. You can have a big dinner, a glass of wine, a cup of coffee, pop a peppermint stick in your mouth, take your Bach remedies, and they'll work just fine. You can't OD on them. I mean, I have the kit here, and we could open up every one and drink it, and they're preserved in medicinal brandy, so we might get a little bit of a buzz. But, I mean, if you take the wrong remedy, this won't work. And they can be used on 2 different levels. One is the acute level, for something that's going on right now. So as a for instance on that, the remedy for confidence is larch. So if you're about to do a presentation in front of people and you sort of begin to lose your confidence and get a little nervous, you take a little bit of larch, maybe a little bit of mimulus, which is for fear, and you'll be fine. If, however, a lack of confidence is something that's really troubled you your entire life, it's like really held you back, you want to start taking larch as what's called a constitutional remedy. Take it over a period of time with some supportive remedies for about 30 days, and it will begin to elevate your frequency. And then at the end of those 30 days, you can take the same ones, you can do another workup. So the art becomes in finding just the right blend of remedies for you. Rescue remedy was created when Bach, so he had this really high dollar medical practice on Fleet Street in London, a very posh part of London, and he retired. He closed down this medical practice, and he moved to this tiny seaside village in Wales. It was like if you had a high-dollar plastic surgery practice in Dallas and closed it down to move to Port Aransas or something, But he continued to practice medicine, but he was really searching out all these plant remedies and perfecting it. And they called him one day because they pulled this fisherman out of the North Sea. His boat had broken up in a storm. He'd floated around on the debris for a day, and he was almost dead. So he threw together some remedies and moistened the guy's lips with it, revived him, and they took him to the hospital, kept him overnight, and he was fine. He went, oh. Originally it was 3 remedies, and then later he went, there's 2 more I could add to this. So rescue remedy is truly the quintessential stress remedy. It's 5 remedies combined, and they are, boom, like immediate acute stress. This is when you've just had an accident or almost had an accident or just had an argument with somebody, you're completely fried. I was telling somebody, we were talking about that last night, and do you have any rescue remedy? As a matter of fact, and 2 or 3 of us went, yeah, I've got some in my purse or my briefcase, carrying it around with you. So I was doing a Reiki class with my teacher, Laurie Grant, the 2.5-day intensive. I worked and traveled with her for a long time, and she would have this many people or more in a class, 50, 60 people. Yeah, and talk about the energetic level when you started getting into the attunements. Yeah. And light bulbs would blow out, So a couple of women came up to me at lunch and said, you've got to go talk to this woman. She's having a complete emotional breakdown out in the hall, and she needs to talk to a man, a guy, to get grounded. So I walked out and she said, oh my God, I used to have this glamorous life. I was an airline hostess, and I traveled all over the world, and I married this guy, and all he wants to do is play golf and leave me here and sitting. And I went, oh my God, open your mouth. And she went like that. And you know what? That shit works, doesn't it? In mid-sentence. I went, yeah, here, keep the bottle, and call me on Monday. So I work with them primarily on that level. The idea is you ask somebody what's going on, and then, of course, you'll get into the story, and then you stop them and go, okay, I don't want to hear the whole story. If they say, I'm getting a divorce, I'm doing this, and you automatically know there's certain things that are going to be coming up. But if it gets into a long, drawn-out story, that anchors you to it, right? The more you tell the story, the more it reinforces the story, and the more you will do what? Attract more of the same. And you might take care of that problem, but it's going to pop up again as another one later. It'll surface in another thing. So the idea is not what's happening, but how do you feel about it? And based on that, then you can begin putting some remedies together. And you can fall into the same trap of going, I know exactly what remedy you need. And so what you do is you listen, you get out the remedies, you put 4 drops of each of these remedies into a little 1-ounce dropper bottle of filtered or spring water, and then shake it up real good, tap it, do your Reiki on it, all of which makes for a good show, and they think, wow, this person's really smart. He really knows what he's doing. And then they take that for 30 days, 4 times a day, 4 drops a day, first thing in the morning, right before you go to bed, a couple of evenly spaced intervals in between, or anytime you think you need them. You cannot OD on them. Just take them whenever you think it's necessary. And then at the end of that 30 days, you can get another workup. You might get a different one. Or there's a couple of them that act as catalytic elements. When you have somebody that's really entrenched in their stuff and they can't think of what remedies they need, or they think they need every remedy in the box, there are a couple of wonderful remedies called, in traditional homeopathy, a polychrist. And their job is to surface the next set of symptomology. So in the course of living many lifetimes in the same body, I was a martial arts instructor, and if you can believe this, I was a bouncer in a bar. I mean, you'd find me pretty intimidating when you walked in, right? And I had a buddy who was another black belt, Tony Martinez, my brother from another mother. And Tony was always the first guy into yoga, everything. We took our first Reiki class together, but he was always the first guy that would get into all the esoteric stuff in our group of instructors. And he started working with me at this bar. Now you're working in a bar, you're kind of like in a high-stress situation every night. I mean, the job of people in a bar is to get you messed up, and people will dive into it and just enjoy the hell out of it, and then sometimes you have to come over and go, you can't do that here. So we were constantly on edge, and he kept saying, man, you need to take some Bach remedies. And I was like this tough guy, I thought they were like aromatherapy. I don't want any wussy flower. So I started going through this big breakup, and I thought, well, maybe he's right. I'll take some rescue remedy, while I'm going through this big relationship thing. And then I thought, maybe I'll research these a little bit. Oh, holly, anger, jealousy. Oh, yeah. So I started taking holly. Well, I didn't know this at the time. Holly is one of the polycrest remedies, and anger is a tool. I mean, anger is a powerful tool. It can pull you out of, if you look at the Abraham Hicks, their levels of, anger is not the bottom level. It's about here mid-level. It can pull you up out of despair and soul-shattering grief. Now, if you decide you're going to continue to use it, then it gets a little tricky, because it's a double-edged sword. So all the things that were underneath all this anger started coming up, and I was needing every remedy in the book. And I finally found this guy who was teaching it, Eric Love, and he was teaching a 2.5-day intensive. He was funny, he was engaging, and we just went through every remedy. We practiced doing workups for each other, and then when we left with our own little 30-day thing. And he said, if you really want to know these remedies, work yourself up a 30-day combination and then do a polycrest for 30 days and see what comes up. So I did that for months. And as, the yellow oxygen masks finally dropped on this relationship thing, the captain had already long ago said, return to your seats, there's some turbulence, and we were going down. I was in the middle of doing one of these polycrests, and I was in, soul-searing, processing this. And I called Eric up. I said, I don't know how much more of this I can take. And he said, how long have you been doing it? I said, about 2 weeks. He said, well, do another workup. I went, you said 30 days. He said, no. I said 30 days or until you figure out what the next set of, look in the book. And I went, oh. So here I was trying to learn my lesson by suffering. And really all I had to do was just follow the instructions. So I made up some more remedies, and then I got way into it, and I started learning them, and I started doing workups. Tony, meanwhile, had moved back to Flagstaff, opened up a school there where he was raised, and he had bought an Italian food restaurant from one of his students. He's Hispanic, and he said, man, if I just speak Spanish real fast and say ciao every now and again, everybody thinks I'm Italian. Mama Luisa. If you're ever in Flagstaff, go to Mama Luisa and tell Tony Michael said hi. So I would go up there and stay with him because Flagstaff is this really high, holy, spiritual place where the Katsinas live. And he would feed me at the restaurant, and then he would line up his staff and his students and his family, and they would sit down. I'd do Bach remedy workups for them. I was working for food. And we're sitting around one night with a glass of wine, and we were talking about it. He said, man, you're like Mr. Bach remedies, And I said, yeah, I never would do them back in the past when you were, trying to, and he said, yeah, you were. And I said, no, remember you tried to get me to take them and I wouldn't take them. He said, you were taking them. I said, what are you talking about? He said, you remember when you would come into the bar from the karate school, I'd hand you a glass of water and a beer? And I went, you were spiking my drink? You son of a gun. Thanks. Now, you have to have a really good relationship with somebody to be able to do that. I don't recommend it, but it's what it took. At the level that I was vibrating at that time, it took somebody, slipping me a Mickey, doing stealth Bach remedies, and it worked. So we all find the teachers, the modalities, the things that we need at the place we need them and in the form that we need them. And then when it comes along, you can either accept it or not. And just full confession, I have the privilege of reading a lot of Joe's books ahead of time because he sends me articles that eventually become blog posts and eventually become the theme for a book. So when I heard about this, I was kind of interesting. So I kind of read it and theoretically sort of got it. And I thought, man, I'm going out there. I need to watch all these videos, read the books, listen to the music for the next week. So by the time I got out here, I felt like Wile E. Coyote was okay. You know, I think I got it this time. You know, I think I'm ready for this. So we get the lessons in the form that we're ready to accept them.